Hello friends, today we will be finishing the Possessed House series. I will put both videos in a playlist for your viewing pleasure. With that being said, I do hope you enjoy today's video. We didn't set up cameras in the basement because that's where Father Frank and I were going to watch the family. I asked Frank if video surveillance was common, and he said no, but that he did it all the time. It helps weed out the crazies. Frank didn't seem to believe the stories. He figured the family was a bunch of religious nutjobs that saw a demon in every nook and cranny. I didn't know if this was a thinly veiled prejudice because the family was Adventist, but I didn't ask. So, that night, we sat in the basement, of all places, where the girl had seen the evil bunny covered in blood and Cody's face in the patterns of the wood paneling, and watched the family on 3 computer monitors. Frank told me he bought the surveillance equipment on the church's dime, and to keep quiet. He didn't want it to get back to the bishop. I felt Frank was sinning, lying, and stealing like that, and had planned to report him after this was all over. But those thoughts were miles away after what happened that night. I felt weird, creepy, spying on this family, and also terrified, sitting in the darkness of their basement, a place I had not heard any good stories about. Frank insisted all the lights be off, and I couldn't help but peek over my shoulder every few minutes, expecting to see the evil bunny wielding a bat covered in gore. "Quit it," Frank told me. "You're making me nervous. This is all bullshit. You'll see." I jumped a little at his use of foul language. Father Frank was obviously a priest who had seen too much and didn't care anymore. He made me feel awkward, but not any more awkward than I felt watching the family in their living room saying their nightly devotions. The father was reading the passage from Mark where Jesus cast the demons out of the possessed man. "Legion, for we are many." The demons cried before Jesus cast them into the herd of swine, who met their demise when they were rushed into a lake and drowned. I think this passage was supposed to comfort his family, but they were part of the wrong religion for any sort of protection from a force this malevolent. I guess, at very least, they had turned to the church in their time of need, but part of me doubted we could do anything either. That's when I realized I felt it too, a presence, something heavy pressing on me. It was whispering lies to me, causing me to doubt. I felt inferior in its presence. Have the demons, have they ever made you doubt God? I nervously asked Frank. Have they ever made you lose faith? They will try. They're just looking for a weak spot in your psyche. I hope you have faith to move mountains, because if you don't, they'll rip you to shreds. I swallowed. I had faith, but I feared that maybe I didn't have enough to stand against Satan and his legion. To be honest, I was scared out of my mind, sweat dripping down my sides and shaking. I felt sick to my stomach, like there was a large stone there. "Calm down," Frank said. "They feed off fear." That just made me more scared. I had the sudden urge to glance over my shoulder again, but I kept my eyes transfixed on the monitors. We watched the parents get into bed, then the kids. All was silent, no movement, nothing. Frank drank black coffee and ate a donut and offered me one. I refused. Then I saw something moving beneath the kids' sheets. At first, I didn't believe my eyes. Figured it was one of the kids squirming, but the boy and girl were absolutely still in their queen bed. It moved again, snaking under the sheets towards their feet. I was about to say something to Frank, but the words caught in my throat when I glanced back at the monitor, and the sheet bellowed like a hot air balloon and floated around the room. I swallowed hard, staring intently at the floating sheet. And then I saw something worse. A face in the fabric. It looked like a young boy with a white sheet over his head, pretending to be a ghost for Halloween. Except that boy was floating around the room. The sheet drifted to the girl's side of the bed, and I saw the boy's mouth moving beneath. Frank turned up the volume, mostly static, but within the static, whispering, "Come play with me. I'm buried out back. Dig me up and play with me." The girl sat up, eyes glowing. Frank told me it was just the night vision on the camera. I didn't believe him. The girl started chanting in Latin, "Et ideo exaltebitur barcuns, et ideo exaltebitur barcuns, et ideo exaltebitur barcuns. He is rising, he is rising, he is rising." Then she got up and started beating her head against the wall. I immediately stood up. "We have to stop this." "Sit your ass down," Frank said. "But we're just observing. We can't interrupt. We need to know what we're dealing with." I sat back down, terrified, shaking. This was too much. "They're going to hurt them," I said, and I hated it. But I could hear tears in my voice. Frank looked at me like I was weak and pathetic and said, "They won't kill them." The girl climbed back in bed, blood dribbling down her face, and went to sleep like nothing had happened. The form beneath the sheet dissipated, and the sheet collapsed over the son and daughter's bodies. We watched the monitors for hours, I intently, barely blinking, Frank sipping coffee, scratching his mustache, yawning occasionally. Nothing happened. Then, voices? "What is that?" "Voices," Frank shot back, like he was talking to an idiot. He cranked up the volume, adjusted the static. 2 voices sounded like men. They were discussing killing the boy, cutting off his head, and eating his organs. I started praying, felt like puking. "You okay?" Frank asked, though he didn't seem very interested. "I can't just sit here and watch this. We can't do anything. We need to observe." That's when all hell broke loose. The nutcracker on the dresser began to float around the room, clacking its mouth up and down, speaking in some hollow wooden language. The bedroom door creaked open, and the shadow of a bunny fell long across the wall. The shrieking and crying of children nearly blew out Frank's speakers. Not the 2 kids in the room, but the disembodied voices of children. Hundreds of them. The bedroom door slammed closed with a bang. The bunny's shadow disappeared. The nutcracker fell out of the air and cracked the son on the head, and both the son and daughter woke up screaming and crying. I couldn't take it anymore. I got up and the bunny was standing right behind me. A bad Easter get-up, cone head, droopy eye holes, gaping mouth with buck teeth. The furry chest was drenched in blood, and the end of the bat covered in gore. I wept, dropping to my knees, covering my eyes. I tried to recite passages from the gospel, but my throat swelled up. 2 hands gripped my neck and squeezed. As the most terrifying, horrible noises I have ever heard swelled in my ears. An orchestra of demonic tongues speaking in a language not meant for human ears. Finally, fighting for breath and for life, my heart hammering, I cried, I cast you out, unclean spirit, along with every satanic power of the enemy, every specter from hell and your foul companions, in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ. The invisible hands released my throat, and the cacophony of demonic tongues ceased. The evil bunny was gone. I turned to Frank, who just sat by the monitors, glaring at me. Frank? Frank opened his mouth, and roaches spilled out, but somehow I could hear him speak through the avalanche of insects pouring out of his maw. I always knew you were a fucking Nancy boy. Thou shalt not lie with mankind as with womankind. It is an abomination. Leviticus 18:22. Do you not read your Bible, you wretch? If you are the army of the carpenter, then your God is truly feeble. We will make them scream in agony. He was saying the most vile, awful things to me, and I couldn't take it anymore. So I ran upstairs to check on the kids, and that's when I saw it. A noose hanging from the banisters, dangling into the stairwell. I pushed past it, up the stairs, and toward the hallway that led to the children's bedroom. In the hall, I saw a little boy wearing a baseball cap and a catcher's mitt. Embroidered on the cap was the name Cody. I blinked and he was gone, but a baseball rolled across the carpet and stopped at my feet, speckled in blood. I kicked it away and ran down the hall and struggled to open the door to the son and daughter's room, but some force was holding it shut. I prayed and kicked at the door, and it flung open, and I found the boy and the girl huddled together in the sheets, sobbing. I held them and told them it was going to be okay. Soon, the parents and Frank joined me. "What happened?" the father demanded. "Didn't you hear your daughter banging her head against the wall?" Frank said. I glared at Frank, even though knowing what I had witnessed earlier was a hallucination, a demon preying on my insecurities, and not actually Frank himself. I told the family we needed to get out of the house immediately, but the father refused. I told him it wasn't safe here until we performed an exorcism, and this man, this self-righteous preacher man, who had invited us into his house to ward away evil spirits, actually had the gall to tell me, "No, we're going to stay up all night and pray. We're going to do this ourselves." I said, "I know you're a religious man. So am I. But your house is full of evil. You can't do this by yourself. You need the authority of Christ and His church." "I want to do this," the father insisted. "I need to do this. If I can't protect my family, nobody can." He was full of pride, and I didn't know if it was the demons or if he was just this way naturally. "I think you need to see the tapes," I told him. "No, I don't want to see the tapes. A demon attacked your child. Get out of my house, you pagans. You're the Antichrist. You brought these demons into my home." I was about to argue with him, but Frank said, "Let's get the fuck out of here." I would have been more shocked by his F-bomb if I hadn't just witnessed demons attacking children and heard the spew of toxic waste the roach hallucination of Frank had spewed at me earlier. On our way out, I grabbed the Nutcracker doll. I don't know why. I wanted to keep a piece of this place to study, or something. Or I wanted to protect the boy from it, as if this doll contained the evil and not the house itself. Frank packed up the surveillance equipment, and we left. I noticed the noose was gone from the stairwell on our way out. Frank and I went to a Greasy Spoon and had an early 4 a.m. breakfast. "Those fools, they don't know what they're doing," he said. He ordered bacon and eggs, and even though it was Friday and it was Lent, but I didn't say anything. By now, I had gotten a clear picture that Frank was not a very good priest, and was definitely not fit for this job. But neither was I. I loved God, but I was filled with doubt, insecurity, and sin. And I wasn't so sure it was just the demons from the house having a negative influence on me. He thinks he can just pray the demons out, I said, disgusted. He's not an exorcist. He's not trained for demonic combat or spiritual warfare. Frank laughed at me, but I didn't ask him why, though it upset me. That house needs to be burned to the ground if you ask me, Frank said. Really? I've never seen a house so possessed with evil. He shoved a piece of bacon in his mouth and I winced. He seemed to derive pleasure from that. You know, that's the same house where I found the girl in the tub. But I didn't tell you the whole story. What actually happened is that on her 16th birthday, she was found hanging upside down from the shower rod, eviscerated, her guts in a neat pile in the sink, and her pet dog drowned in its owner's blood. They found her boyfriend in the kitchen, carving the mark of the beast into his forehead with a kitchen knife, crying, "He rises, he rises." I pushed my pancakes away. I wasn't hungry anymore. You know what I think? Frank said. I think that's the devil's house. After we left the diner, I tossed a nutcracker into a dumpster out back, and we headed to the basement of the cathedral to review the tapes and write up a report. A few days later, the paper boy delivered the Bismarck Tribune to the rectory's steps, and I picked it up, and when I saw the headline, I nearly puked. Mandan murder-suicide. The father had beaten his wife to death with a baseball bat, then hung himself from the banister. He was found wearing a bunny suit. Written on the wall in blood was Et ideo exaltebitur parcuns. Blood splatter of the children was found all over their bedroom, but the bodies were missing. I called the Mandan Police Department anonymously and told them to dig up the yard. Sure enough, the backyard was excavated and they found a child graveyard. 64 bodies. 66 if you include the son and daughter, buried in the family garden beneath some rhubarb and yellow summer squash. The boy was found with a nutcracker jammed down his tiny throat, the gaping mouth of the doll within the boy's own gaping mouth. I don't think I can do this job any longer. Frank tells me I'll get used to it, but I don't know. Frank tells me I'll never see another demon again, most likely, but I can't shake it off. I feel depressed and alienated. I find myself doubting a loving God who can let this sort of evil exist in his world. I know I'm supposed to have faith and not question his ways, but something inside me feels broken. I feel myself growing bitter and angry at God. Maybe I'm possessed. Maybe I need to have more faith. Maybe I need professional help. Maybe I need to stop thinking about men. Maybe I need to quit the ministry, and maybe I need to quit returning to that house in my dreams. Sometimes I sleepwalk and I find myself lying in the house's basement chanting, "Non est hic surrexit, non est hic surrexit, non est hic surrexit." He is risen. He is risen. He is risen. What have I done? Well, friends, that is the end of this series, and it seems whatever evil was in that house has gotten a grasp of our Father in training. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe for more tales of terror. And as always, I am Crafty the Teller, your humble narrator. Good night.